A little girl was about to throw away a broken music box when a struggling single dad whispered, "Wait! Sometimes the things people abandon are the things holding the most precious memories." No one at the weekend flea market knew that a tiny wooden box, covered in scratches and dust, was about to bring a billionaire back to a song she thought was lost forever. The Saturday morning market in Cedar Hollow was filled with the quiet sounds of ordinary life. Vendors unfolded tables, coffee cups steamed beneath the autumn sky, and old treasures waited beneath handwritten price tags. For most people, it was just a place to buy forgotten things. But for Ethan Carter, it was a place where forgotten things sometimes deserved a second chance. Ethan was a single father raising his 8-year-old son, Noah, while repairing antiques from his small workshop behind their modest home. He did not have expensive tools or a fancy storefront. He had patience, careful hands, and a belief that almost anything could be restored if someone cared enough to try. That morning, Ethan noticed a little girl named Lily standing beside a wooden table, holding a small music box with tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean to break it," Lily said softly. "I only wanted to hear the song." The older man selling the items shook his head. "That thing was already old. Now it's useless." Nearby, a well-dressed antique collector named Victor Hale glanced at the box and smiled politely. "Children don't understand the value of delicate things," he said. "Perhaps it's better if someone experienced takes it off your hands." Lily lowered her head and tightened her grip around the music box. She looked like she was ready to believe she had ruined something important. Ethan stepped closer. "May I see it?" he asked. Lily looked up. "You can fix it?" Ethan smiled gently. "I can try. That's different." He did not promise a miracle. He did not pretend to know everything. He simply sat down at the edge of the market table and carefully examined the little wooden box. The crowd slowly moved on, but Ethan stayed focused. He noticed the scratches were not from carelessness. The broken part was inside the mechanism. Someone had opened the box before. Someone had tried to repair it without understanding how the pieces worked together. "She didn't break this," Ethan said calmly. "This was already damaged." Victor's smile faded for only a moment. "Are you sure about that?" Ethan looked at the tiny gears inside. "I'm sure enough to check before blaming a child." The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Lily watched as Ethan carefully cleaned the small parts, adjusted the spring, and gently turned the winding key. The box remained silent at first. Then, after a long pause, one soft note escaped. The sound was fragile, almost like a memory waking up after many years asleep. Ethan stopped. Lily's eyes widened. Across the market, a woman in a cream-colored coat suddenly turned around. Clara Whitmore had arrived only moments earlier, hoping to spend one peaceful morning away from the attention that followed her everywhere. As the founder of one of America's largest art foundations, she was used to hearing important conversations, expensive negotiations, and people asking what she could give them. But she had never expected to hear that melody again. Her face changed as the tiny music box continued playing. The song was unfinished, but she knew it. She knew the rhythm. She knew the first few notes, because it was the song her mother used to play for her before everything in their family changed. Ethan looked up, unaware of who she was. Lily held the music box carefully as if it were something precious. And Clara Whitmore took one slow step toward them, because after 25 years, a song from her childhood had finally returned. "Where did you get that music box?" she asked quietly. Ethan turned toward the stranger. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness had just reopened a secret powerful people had spent decades trying to forget. Clara Whitmore stood still beside the crowded market aisle, staring at the small wooden music box in Ethan Carter's hands, as if the past had suddenly found a way to speak. "That melody, where did you find it?" she asked again, her voice quieter this time. Ethan looked from Clara to the box, confused by the emotion in her eyes. "I found it right here," he answered. It was sitting on a table waiting for someone to notice it. The answer surprised her. Most people who approached Clara knew her name, her company, and the influence attached to both. But this man did not even ask who she was. He only cared that a child had been blamed for something she did not do. The market continued moving around them. Vendors called out prices. Customers carried bags filled with old books and handmade crafts. But for a moment, Clara heard only the soft mechanical sound coming from the repaired music box. She stepped closer. "May I?" Ethan carefully handed it to her. Clara held the wooden box with both hands, almost afraid that a careless movement might make the memory disappear again. The tiny carving on the bottom caught her attention. A small set of initials hidden beneath years of wear. EW to CW. Her breathing changed. She knew those letters. Ethan noticed her expression. "You recognize it?" Clara slowly looked at him. "I think I might." Before she could explain, Victor Hale approached with his usual polite smile. "Ms. Whitmore, I did not expect to see you here." Ethan noticed the change immediately. Victor was no longer speaking like a friendly collector. His confidence had become careful. Clara looked at him. "Victor, you know this music box?" Victor glanced at the item and answered too quickly. "It is an old piece, probably a reproduction. These markets are full of things people mistake for valuable." Ethan looked down at the box again. Something about Victor's answer felt wrong. Not because he was rude, but because he sounded certain before even examining it. Clara noticed the same thing. "A reproduction with my mother's initials?" she asked. For the first time, Victor had no immediate response. Lily stood beside Ethan, holding her small backpack tightly. She looked worried. Ethan lowered himself slightly so he was closer to her height. "You did nothing wrong," he told her. "Remember that." Lily nodded quietly. Those simple words seemed to matter more than she expected. Clara watched the moment carefully. She had spent years around people who wanted something from her. Contracts, investments, opportunities. But Ethan had repaired a priceless memory and never once asked for anything. "Why did you fix it?" Clara asked. Ethan looked at the music box. Because she was about to throw away something she loved because everyone told her it was broken. He paused. "Sometimes people do that too." Clara felt those words deeper than she expected. For years, she had built walls around painful memories, believing that leaving the past behind was easier than understanding it. But now, standing in a weekend flea market, a forgotten song was reminding her of a promise her mother once made. Victor cleared his throat. "Clara, if this is connected to your family, perhaps we should discuss it privately." Ethan noticed the urgency in his voice. Clara did too. "Why?" she asked. "Because you seem more concerned about this box than the person who was holding it." The market became quieter around them. Victor forced a small smile. "I am simply trying to protect you from confusion." Ethan gently turned the music box over and pointed to the repaired mechanism. "Whoever worked on this before changed the inside parts. Someone wanted it to look broken." Clara looked at the damaged pieces carefully. The truth was no longer just a feeling. It was becoming a pattern. A child had been blamed. A valuable item had been dismissed. And a man who had nothing to gain had been the first person to look closely enough to notice. Clara held the music box again, listening as the final unfinished notes faded away. Then she looked at Ethan and said, "I need to know where this came from." Ethan nodded. "Then I think we should find out together." But neither of them knew that the answer was connected to a secret someone had spent years trying to keep silent. The morning after the flea market, Ethan Carter woke before sunrise, just as he always did. The small kitchen of his modest home was quiet except for the sound of coffee dripping and the soft footsteps of his son Noah walking down the hallway. "Dad, are you still thinking about that music box?" Noah asked. Ethan smiled while packing a lunch bag. "I am thinking about the girl who thought she ruined it." Noah looked at him curiously. "But you fixed it." Ethan shook his head gently. "I only helped it speak again." Those words stayed with him because Ethan had learned something during his years as a single father. Broken things were not always worthless. Sometimes they only needed someone patient enough to listen. Across town, Clara Whitmore sat inside her office overlooking the city. The view was impressive, but she barely noticed it. On her desk sat the old wooden music box wrapped carefully in a soft cloth. She had spent the entire night searching through memories she thought were gone forever. Her mother's handwriting, the initials carved beneath the box, the melody that had filled their home when she was a child. Everything pointed to one impossible truth. This was not just an antique. It was a piece of her family history. Clara opened an old storage file from her personal records. Inside were photographs from decades earlier. One image showed her mother holding a similar music box during a family gathering. Clara touched the photograph quietly. "How did you disappear?" she whispered. But before she could find answers, her assistant informed her that Victor Hale had requested a meeting. Victor arrived with his usual calm expression and expensive suit. "Clara, I understand why you are curious," he said. "But emotions can make people see connections that are not really there." Clara placed the music box on the table. "Then explain why you knew it was important before I told you anything." Victor paused. It was only a second, but Clara noticed. She had built a billion-dollar company by noticing small details. "I have collected antiques for 30 years, Victor replied. "I recognize valuable pieces." Clara looked at him carefully. "You recognized the piece before examining it." Silence filled the room. Victor changed the subject smoothly. "The simplest explanation is usually the right one. That box was probably sold many times. It does not mean there is a hidden story." But Clara was no longer searching for the simplest explanation. She was searching for the truth. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to his workshop behind his house. The small room smelled of wood polish and old paper. Tools lined the wall. Every item had a place. He did not have the equipment of a large restoration company, but he had years of experience repairing things people had given up on. The music box details stayed in his mind. The unusual replacement parts, the careful damage, the hidden initials. He opened his notebook and wrote down everything he remembered. Ethan did not know Clara's identity. He did not know the box belonged to one of the wealthiest women in America. He only knew a child had been blamed unfairly, and an old object deserved honesty. Later that afternoon, Clara arrived at Ethan's workshop. The contrast was obvious. Her world was filled with skyscrapers and private meetings. His world was filled with wooden shelves and quiet repairs. Yet when she stepped inside, she felt something she rarely felt anymore. "Peace. You really do this every day?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Most days. Why repair things nobody else wants?" Ethan looked at an old clock on his table. "Because someone once taught me that value is not always visible at first glance." Clara watched him carefully. "Who taught you that?" Ethan paused. "My wife." A quiet moment passed. "Before she passed away, she told me our son needed to grow up knowing that kindness still mattered." Clara lowered her eyes. For the first time, she saw Ethan not as a man who fixed an object, but as someone who carried a lifetime of quiet responsibility. Then Ethan noticed something beneath the music box mechanism. A tiny piece of paper hidden between two wooden panels. He carefully removed it. The paper was old and fragile, but one line was still readable. Clara stepped closer. Her expression changed instantly, because written on that forgotten piece of paper was a name she had not seen in 25 years. Her mother's name. The name on the fragile piece of paper was enough to make Clara Whitmore forget the noise of the world around her. She stared at the faded ink, barely able to breathe as one thought repeated in her mind. How could her mother's name be hidden inside a music box that disappeared 25 years ago? Ethan Carter stood quietly beside the workbench, giving her space. He had seen that look before, not from billionaires or powerful people, but from anyone who suddenly found a piece of their past they thought was gone forever. "Is it important?" Ethan asked. Clara looked at the paper again. "More than you could imagine." She carefully held the small note between her fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable. It matched letters her mother had written when Clara was a child. But there was something else on the paper. A date and a location. A place outside town that no longer existed. Ethan leaned closer but did not touch it. "Maybe that is where the story begins." Clara looked at him. Most people would ask how much this is worth. Ethan shook his head. I am not interested in what it is worth. I am interested in who was hurt when it disappeared. Those words stayed with Clara. In her world, value was usually measured by numbers. Company shares, property, investments. But Ethan measured value differently. He saw memories, people, and promises. Before Clara could say anything else, her phone rang. It was Victor Hale. She answered, placing the call on speaker. Clara, I hope you have had time to think clearly, Victor said. His voice remained calm and friendly. I reviewed some old records. That music box has no confirmed connection to your family. Ethan noticed something unusual. Victor did not ask where the box was. He already knew. How did you know we still had it? Clara asked. Pause followed. A very small pause. Because you mentioned it yesterday. Clara looked at Ethan. She had never told Victor that Ethan had repaired it. The silence between them became heavier. Thank you for your concern, Victor, Clara said. But I think I need to investigate this myself. After the call ended, Ethan returned his attention to the music box. He carefully examined the inside again. There is something strange here, he said. Clara moved closer. What? Ethan pointed to a tiny metal piece near the mechanism. This part does not belong to the original design. Someone replaced it years ago. Clara frowned. Why would someone do that? Ethan answered honestly. Maybe to hide something. Maybe to make sure it stopped working. He did not accuse anyone. He did not jump to conclusions. He simply followed the evidence. Clara respected that. She had spent years surrounded by people who made decisions quickly because they wanted to be first, not because they wanted to be right. Ethan moved slowly and carefully, removing another small wooden panel. Behind it was a narrow space that looked almost impossible to notice. Inside was another piece of paper, smaller than the first. Clara reached for it with trembling hands. This time, the message was not a name. It was a sentence. For Clara, when you are old enough to understand why I had to leave. The room became completely quiet. Ethan looked away, allowing Clara a private moment with a message written by someone she had lost. The woman who controlled companies, signed major deals, and influenced entire industries was suddenly just a daughter searching for answers. Clara closed her eyes. My mother never left because she wanted to. Ethan said nothing. He knew some moments did not need advice. They only needed someone to stay. But outside the workshop window, a car stopped near the driveway. Victor Hale stepped out slowly, holding a folder in his hand. He had followed the trail, and now he knew Ethan and Clara had found something. Something he hoped would remain hidden forever. Ethan saw him through the glass. Clara opened her eyes. And for the first time, the question was no longer whether the music box held a secret. The question was who had worked so hard to keep that secret buried. Victor Hale stood outside Ethan Carter's workshop holding a dark leather folder against his chest, wearing the same polite expression he had shown at the flea market. But this time, Clara Whitmore noticed something different. The confidence was still there, but underneath it was hesitation. Clara, Victor said as he stepped inside, I think you may be making a mistake by trusting a stranger with something connected to your family. Ethan remained quiet near the workbench. He did not react to the accusation. He simply watched. For years, Ethan had learned that people often revealed more through what they avoided than what they said. Clara looked at Victor carefully. A stranger who repaired something everyone else ignored, she asked. Victor glanced at the music box. A man with a repair shop is not a historian. We should be careful before creating a story around an old object. Ethan gently closed his notebook. That is why we are checking the evidence instead of guessing. His calm answer made Victor pause. Ethan was not challenging him. He was not trying to prove he was smarter. He was simply following the facts. Clara appreciated that. She had spent much of her life surrounded by people who wanted to control the conversation. Ethan was different. He allowed the truth to lead. Victor placed the folder on the table. I brought records showing that this music box changed hands several times. There is no official proof connecting it to your mother. Clara opened the folder slowly. Inside were auction documents, ownership transfers, and photographs. At first glance, everything looked convincing. But Ethan noticed something small. "Can I see the dates?" he asked. Victor handed him the papers. Ethan studied them carefully. "These records say the box was sold in 1999. Victor nodded. "Exactly." Ethan looked at the music box. "But this repair mark was made before that." Clara stepped closer. "What does that mean?" Ethan pointed to a tiny mark near the replaced mechanism. "Whoever repaired this did not do it after the auction. They did it before." Victor's expression changed slightly. "That proves nothing." Ethan nodded. "You are right. It does not prove everything. It only proves the timeline is incomplete." Clara looked between them. She understood what Ethan was doing. He was not searching for a dramatic answer. He was building a chain of facts. A small clue became another clue. One question became another question. Later that afternoon, Clara returned to her office and opened her family archives. She searched through old photographs, letters, and records that had been stored away for years. Then she found something she had forgotten, a picture from her 7th birthday. In the background was a small wooden music box sitting on a table beside her mother. Clara zoomed in on the image. The shape matched. The carved pattern matched. Even the tiny scratch on the corner was the same. Her hands trembled slightly. The next morning, she returned to Ethan's workshop with the photograph. "You were right," she said. Ethan looked up from repairing an old clock. "About what?" Clara placed the picture beside the music box. "This belonged to my family." Ethan studied the image. He did not celebrate. He did not ask what this discovery could do for him. He simply smiled softly. "Then I am glad it found its way back." Clara looked at him. "Do you understand what this means?" Ethan nodded. "It means someone lost something important." That answer surprised her. Most people would have talked about the value of the antique, the history, the money. Ethan only thought about the person behind it. But before Clara could respond, her assistant called with unexpected news. A private archive had been discovered containing documents from her mother's estate. Documents that had never been made public. Documents connected to the year the music box disappeared. Clara looked at Ethan, then at the box between them. The forgotten song had opened a door, and behind that door was a truth waiting to be heard. The private archive was located in a quiet storage facility outside Cedar Hollow, a place that had protected thousands of forgotten documents for families, businesses, and historical collections. Clara Whitmore arrived early that morning with Ethan Carter beside her, carrying the repaired music box carefully in a small wooden case. She could have brought a team of lawyers, assistants, and experts. She could have turned the discovery into a major corporate investigation. But she chose to bring the one person who had found the truth without asking for anything in return. The archivist placed a small box of documents on the table. "These records were sealed for many years," she explained. "They were part of your mother's private estate." Clara opened the first folder slowly. Inside were letters, handwritten notes, and old photographs. Each piece connected to the same period when the music box disappeared. Ethan stood nearby, allowing Clara to experience the moment without interruption. He understood that some discoveries were not about finding answers quickly. They were about giving people time to accept what they had lost. Clara picked up one letter. The handwriting was familiar. It was her mother's. "My dear Clara," she read quietly, "if you ever find this, I hope you understand that some things disappear because people are afraid, not because they stop loving you." Her voice became softer. Ethan looked away respectfully. He knew this was not his story to take over. It belonged to a daughter and a mother separated by years of unanswered questions. As Clara continued reading, another detail appeared. The music box had been gifted to her mother by a close family friend before a difficult business dispute changed everything. The box was never meant to be sold. It was meant to remain a family reminder. Ethan examined one of the documents carefully. "There is something here," he said. Clara looked over. "What?" He pointed to a signature. This name appears on the transfer record. Clara followed his finger. The signature belonged to Victor Hale. The room became quiet. Victor had not just known about the music box. He had been connected to the moment it left the Whitmore family. Clara did not immediately assume the worst. She remembered Ethan's approach. Evidence first. Judgment later. "We need more than a name," she said. Ethan nodded. "Exactly." That afternoon, they returned to the workshop and organized everything they had discovered. Ethan placed the evidence carefully in order. The original music box, the hidden note, the family photograph, the archive documents, the repair changes, each piece connected to the next. Clara watched him work. "You do this with everything?" she asked. Ethan smiled slightly. "Every repair has a story. You just have to be patient enough to find it." Meanwhile, Victor Hale sat in his office reviewing old files. He was no longer trying to dismiss the music box as meaningless. He knew Clara was getting closer, but instead of making a public argument, he prepared a different approach. He contacted the market owner and requested the original sales records from the day Ethan found the box. He wanted to create doubt before anyone could prove the truth. The next morning, Victor returned to Cedar Hollow with a calm expression and a folder of his own. "I think everyone deserves the complete story," he said. The market visitors gathered as he spoke politely. He showed documents suggesting the music box had been legally purchased years earlier. Some people began questioning whether Clara's memories were enough to prove ownership. Ethan watched quietly. The situation had changed. The truth was no longer hidden, but it was not fully accepted either. Clara looked at Ethan. "What do we do now?" she asked. Ethan looked at the music box sitting between them. "We let the evidence speak." Then the market owner stepped forward with one more piece of information. Something nobody expected. The old security camera from the market entrance had still been working that day, and it had recorded the moment Victor first saw the music box. The old security camera above the entrance of Cedar Hollow's weekend market had been forgotten by almost everyone. It was a small device mounted beneath a wooden beam, covered with years of dust and barely noticed by customers walking beneath it. But sometimes the smallest things are the ones that remember the truth. The market owner, Mr. Reynolds, connected the camera to an old monitor in his office while Clara Whitmore, Ethan Carter, and several vendors gathered nearby. Victor Hale stood at the edge of the room, calm and composed, holding on to his belief that a polite smile could protect any story he told. "This is unnecessary," Victor said. "A camera from years ago will not change the facts." Ethan looked at the screen quietly. "Maybe not, but it might show them." The footage began. At first, nothing seemed important. Customers moved between tables. Vendors arranged antiques. Children looked through boxes of old toys. Then the image reached the moment when Victor first noticed the music box. Everyone leaned closer. The recording showed Victor stopping at the table before Lily touched the box. He picked it up. He examined the bottom. He looked around carefully. Clara watched without saying a word. Ethan noticed something even smaller. Victor had not discovered the music box by accident. He already knew what he was looking for. The video continued. Victor spoke with the seller before Lily arrived. The seller mentioned that the box had been sitting there for years. Victor asked questions about its history. Then he saw Lily holding it later and immediately stepped forward. The room became silent. Victor cleared his throat. "That does not prove anything. I was simply interested in an antique." Clara looked at him. "You told me yesterday it was probably worthless." Victor paused. "I was mistaken." Ethan did not interrupt. He did not need to. The evidence was speaking. Mr. Reynolds adjusted the recording and showed another angle from a second camera near the entrance. This one captured Victor leaving the market after speaking with Lily and the seller. He carried nothing, but it revealed something important. Before leaving, Victor made a phone call. The audio was unclear, but one sentence could be heard. "I found the Whitmore piece." Clara closed her eyes for a moment. The name confirmed what she already suspected. Victor knew exactly what the music box was, but Ethan noticed that the evidence still had one missing piece. We know he recognized it, Ethan said. But we still need to know how it left Clara's family. Clara nodded. She understood. They could not replace one assumption with another. They needed the complete story. Later that day, Ethan returned to his workshop and continued examining the music box. He looked at every repaired piece, every mark, every tiny detail. He was not searching for a dramatic discovery. He was searching for the next honest answer. After several minutes, he noticed something beneath the original wooden panel. A small gap where the surface did not match the rest of the box. He carefully opened the hidden space. Inside was a thin piece of paper protected by layers of old material. Clara stood beside him as he unfolded it. This note was different from the others. It was not written by her mother. It was written by someone else. The signature at the bottom made Clara's expression change. It belonged to Victor Hale's father. The message was short. I promised I would return this when the misunderstanding was settled. I never should have kept it. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The truth was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming more complicated. Victor was not just a collector who found a valuable object. He was connected to the reason the music box disappeared in the first place. Ethan looked at Clara. There is still something we do not know. Clara held the note carefully. What? Ethan looked toward the old music box. Why did his father never return it? At that moment, Clara received a message from her assistant. A new document had been found in the family archive. A document signed on the exact day the music box vanished. And at the bottom of that page was a name nobody expected to see. The document waiting in Clara Whitmore's family archive was not large. It was only a few pages, carefully preserved inside an old folder that had been untouched for decades. But sometimes the smallest pieces of paper carry the heaviest truths. Clara opened the folder slowly while Ethan Carter stood beside her, watching quietly. He knew this moment belonged to her. The first page contained a transfer record from 25 years earlier. The second page contained a handwritten agreement. And the final page contained the signature that made Clara stop. No, she whispered. Ethan looked at the paper. What is it? Clara touched the signature with her finger. My father's business partner signed this. She looked confused. But that does not make sense. He was the person my family trusted most. The document revealed that the music box had not been sold. It had been temporarily transferred for restoration after the original mechanism stopped working. It was supposed to return to the Whitmore family within 30 days. But 30 days passed. Then months. Then years. The music box never came back. Ethan carefully reviewed the timeline. So the box was not lost, he said. It was kept. Clara looked down. That difference mattered. Losing something was an accident. Keeping something was a choice. Meanwhile, Victor Hale continued defending himself publicly. He released a statement saying he had only preserved an antique that had no clear owner. His words sounded reasonable. That was what made him difficult to challenge. He never appeared angry. He never made obvious threats. He simply presented a version of events where nobody was responsible and the truth became blurry. But Ethan understood something important. Confusion was often where unfairness survived. We need the original records, Ethan said. Clara nodded. Where would we find them? Ethan looked at the music box. Somewhere the person who kept it thought nobody would ever look. They returned to the archive and searched through old restoration documents. After several hours, they found another record connected to Victor's father. It showed that he had paid for the restoration but never completed the final return paperwork. There was also a note attached. Owner will collect after family matter is resolved. Clara read the sentence carefully. Family matter? Ethan asked. Clara closed her eyes. There was a disagreement between my parents and their business partners. I was young. I never knew the details. The missing piece was becoming clearer. The music box had disappeared during a difficult time when people were protecting reputations instead of protecting memories. Later that evening, Clara met Victor at a quiet cafe near the town square. She brought Ethan with her, not because she needed protection, but because she trusted his ability to see facts clearly. Victor looked at the documents placed on the table. His expression remained controlled. "These papers do not prove I personally took anything." Clara nodded. "You are right. They do not." Victor seemed relieved. Then Ethan placed another document beside them. It was the original restoration invoice. The date matched the year the music box disappeared. The technician's notes were clear. "Return directly to Whitmore residence after completion." Victor looked at the paper. For the first time, his confidence weakened. Clara spoke softly. "Your father made a promise." Victor looked away. "My father made mistakes." Ethan answered calmly. "Everyone does. The question is what they do after." The conversation became quiet. Victor was no longer arguing about the value of the music box. He was facing the history attached to it. Then Clara received another message. Her assistant had found one final piece of evidence. A private recording from the restoration shop owner who had worked on the music box 25 years earlier. A recording that could finally explain why the box never returned home. And this time, the truth would not come from documents. It would come from the person who was there. The old restoration shop recording was stored on a small digital file created years before anyone thought it would matter. Yet when Clara Whitmore, Ethan Carter, and the archive specialist pressed play, the room became completely silent. An elderly voice filled the speakers. "My name is Samuel Brooks. I restored a music box for the Whitmore family 25 years ago." Clara closed her eyes. She knew the name. Samuel had been one of the most respected restoration experts in the region. "The box was never sold," the recording continued. "It was repaired according to the owner's request and prepared for return. But before it could be delivered, Victor Hale's father arrived with documents claiming there was a temporary family agreement." Ethan listened carefully. He did not rush to conclusions. He waited for every detail. The recording continued. "I questioned the request because the paperwork did not match the original ownership records. But I was told the matter would be resolved quickly." Clara looked at the table. For years, she had believed the music box was simply lost. She never imagined that someone had placed it in the middle of a disagreement where memories became paperwork and family became business. Ethan noticed something else. Did he mention where the box went after that? The archivist searched through the remaining files. Then another audio section appeared. Samuel's voice returned. "I kept a copy of the original return receipt because something did not feel right. The box was supposed to go back to the Whitmore residence after the agreement ended." Clara leaned forward. "Where is that receipt?" A few minutes later, the document was found inside the archive. It was old, but the information remained clear. The music box had an official destination. The Whitmore home. Not a collector. Not an auction. Not a private buyer. Home. Ethan looked at Clara. "Now we have a complete chain." He pointed to each piece of evidence. The music box. The family initials. The restoration records. The return receipt. The recording. Clara nodded slowly. The truth was no longer just a memory. It was documented. But Ethan also knew something else. Evidence could reveal what happened. It could not decide what people should do next. Later that evening, Clara met Victor Hale again. This time, she did not bring accusations. She brought facts. The music box sat between them on the table. "Victor," she said calmly, "I know your father made a mistake. I know the records were hidden. But I want to understand why." Victor looked at the box for a long moment. The confidence he always carried seemed quieter now. "My father believed he was protecting something," Victor said. "The family disagreement was becoming public. He thought keeping the box away would prevent more problems." Clara listened carefully. "And what did you believe?" Victor looked down. "I believed if enough time passed, nobody would ask questions anymore." Ethan remained silent. That answer revealed more than any argument could have. The problem was never just the music box. It was the belief that forgotten things no longer mattered. Clara took a breath. "The truth matters even when it is inconvenient." Victor nodded slightly. For the first time, he did not try to control the conversation. He admitted that his family had kept information hidden. He agreed to provide the remaining records from his father's collection. But Ethan noticed one final detail. Victor still had not explained one thing. Why had he tried to buy the music box from Lily at the market instead of simply returning it? The answer came the next morning when a new document arrived. It was a handwritten note from Victor's father. One sentence was underlined. The child holding this music box may be the only person who can bring the song back to the family. Clara read the message twice. Ethan looked at Lily's name written in the original market records. And suddenly everyone understood. The little girl who thought she had damaged something precious had actually been the person who helped uncover the truth.